All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of the Young Black Suburban. Here we have a special guest today. He is a doctor of education, amongst many things. Dr. Keith Hilton, how are we doing today?
I'm blessed. How about you?
I'm doing good. A mutual friend of ours set up a chance for us to meet. We were supposed to meet a little while ago. I'm glad that you can
That's
make
right.
some time to hop on my show today. I really appreciate it.
Well, what I've heard, all the good things that you're doing, I couldn't miss this opportunity to be a part of this.
I appreciate it. So why don't we just dive right into it and start talking about your upbringing, where you came from, how you became to be this person that we see today. Where are you from?
So I tell people who know me, I usually say I was born in Virginia, And the reason
Okay.
I said that is because my mother's name was Virginia, and I was born in the state of Virginia.
Nice,
Okay.
nice. What town?
And Roanoke,
Oh, in
uh,
Roanoke. Okay.
yeah, in the Star City.
Nice.
And I left Virginia for college. Then I lived and studied, worked in Tennessee, Illinois, New York, California, and now I'm in Florida.
Wow, all over the place, huh? When you
All
when
over.
when you're a teacher at that level, it's almost like a football player sometimes, huh? You gotta
You
pick
got to
which
move.
team you're gonna play with, what town you're gonna live in.
And sometimes you get traded.
Right. Sometimes you get traded. That's it. So, how was your upbringing though? You said you talked about your mom, Virginia. Did you live in a two-parent household?
Yeah, I was very blessed, very fortunate to have a mother and a father with me and my brothers and sisters throughout. I also had a very large extended family as well. So there was a lot of love around, aunts, uncles, great aunts, great uncles, grandparents, you name it.
Right.
We have quite a number of family on all four sides of my family.
Right. And you close knit. Did that kind of help you with your upbringing? Everybody raised everybody, or you know? It,
So let me put it to you this way.
mhm.
The perfect example of that is that I was. We have a family reunion, a family cookout every 4th of July, and
Right.
it's been going on since for over 70 years. We have not missed a year, and I'm not 70 years old. So I
Right.
was born
Right.
into that. So I was born
Right.
into that, and so that's what my family has been from the day that I became aware of anything. Family has always been around.
Right. Do you remember your early education growing up in Roanoke? Do you remember, elementary school, junior high?
So I was absolutely. I started out back when there was segregation, and so
Okay.
there was no integration. So I started out first grade through the 7th grade in an all-black school, and then went over to the integrated school for high school. So yeah, I can tell you good stories and bad stories about growing up in Roanoke and growing up in that part of the country. And
Right.
sometimes people consider Roanoke to be a very southern city, but sometimes it depends on where you are from. I'm in Florida right now, and people here think, "Well, you're in Virginia. That's way up north."
Yeah, right,
So
right,
it's all
right,
relative. It's all relative. It's all
right.
relative.
And it's funny. You said that you grew up in segregation. Actually, me, uh, in the opposite situation as you, where my dad was able to move me and my sisters to a predominantly white neighborhood where we were the only black kids in school until about seventh and eighth grade. Um, so I would like to hear, did you know any difference when you were growing up being in a segregated elementary school, junior high school, or did it just feel like that was the way it was?
It was natural.
Hmm.
And I remember the great thing about growing up, starting school at an all black school was that you usually had relatives there with you. So I grew up with a lot of, again, back to the whole notion of family. I grew up with a lot of family from the very beginning. And
Right,
so they helped nurture me and reinforce my interest in being an educator.
right.
So and being educated, I should say. At that time, I had no idea what I would be doing, but they
Mhm.
wanted me to get a good education, and so I can say honestly, I've been a college professor now, and I've been at both predominantly Black and predominantly white institutions. Uh, I don't think that I would have had that same kind of nurturing at a predominantly white school at that time. And I can't speak for what you experienced.
Yeah.
And just to piggyback on what you said, my youngest daughter, she went to predominantly white schools until she went to college. And then when she went
Hmm.
to college, she ended up going to Howard University. And you
Right,
can't get
right.
any more blacker than Howard in terms of
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
consciousness at that level.
Definitely. For me, I didn't really I realized it early on, but I really didn't have like a social realization until, I started to have more black kids come into the school and everything. But I do remember like being in uh elementary school and saying to my father, I wish that I was like these kids
Mm-hmm.
uh that weren't like me, because I saw that they had, to me at the time, it seemed like they had privilege. They had an easier way of doing it. And I'm talking in kindergarten, and then really early on, my dad saying, uh, you should be happy about who you are. You should be proud, and learning from a kindergarten age, and it was a little confusion for me because no one ever treated me bad at that time or anything, but I was already in kindergarten saying that this little white girl was going to be my girlfriend, and everything, and my dad picked up on that early. I, that's just something that talking to you right now is making me remember, in my life. Do you remember the integration part of you when you went to high school? um it's quite opposite from me. You went to high school and you started to interact with more Caucasian people. Do you remember those experiences?
So Tim, here's my situation at my household. We lived in an all Black community,
Hmm.
but to the left in front of my house was the white community. So
Okay.
I had a bit of different experience in some of even my neighbors, because I had a few white friends that I would play with, and they would come to my backyard to play. But
Right.
for the most part, I still lived in a very very Black uh, community, and very very pleased. And I can remember the days when we were being bused across town, and
Mm.
we were being up in the Black bus going across town, and the white kids would have their eggs, and they would egg our bus. That was
Right.
one of the first experiences I remember, an education. And then I
Right.
remember
Right.
when I was in the eighth grade, eighth grade, uh, and I remember one of my first classes. I said, "Look at this is a white guy." I said, "This guy has blonde hair." I had
Hmm.
never seen someone with blonde hair like that. From little things
Right.
like that. Little things like that.
Right. 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 Now, as far as the education goes, um, I don't know if you would be able to tell, a difference between, cultures who got uh this type of education and who got a better education. The reason why I bring that up is because I grew up in a predominantly white neighborhood. All my family members, except my family, grew up in the inner city in Philadelphia. I remember going to my grandmother's house. I have two other cousins, female cousins, we were the same age. We're both in seventh grade together, but their schoolwork seemed to be maybe about 2 years behind my schoolwork. um, have you ever witnessed that in education when it comes to different cultures, or even at that time when you were going to school, did you ever have any inkling in your mind that, wait, this educational system is different than this one?
So let me address it in three different uh, environments. One, when I was a little kid growing up, and I knew that I was good. I felt I was getting a very good education at the all Black school I was going to,
Mhm.
first through seventh grade. Um, and those were a little ahead of me. But when integration kicked in the eighth grade, uh, a lot of the students who came the year or two before me who went to the white school,
Mhm.
predominantly white school, they had a hard time. Now, I don't think it's because they were not smart enough, but I think that there was some racism going on, that they were the guinea pigs.
Uh,
And so many of those students, now today I have a PhD, and I'm certainly not the smartest person in my family. I
mhm,
wasn't the smartest in my classes, but I had perseverance. I knew that very early. But I
right.
do also know that the people around me, my classmates, were just as smart. But
Mhm,
something happened to them along the way that prevented them from excelling like I did. Although, Tim, let me tell you, I went to a pretty good high school, predominantly
mhm,
white high school, one of the best in the area. But
right.
I was the first student or graduate of the school at that year to later get a PhD. So again, whatever they were learning before they got to we met in the eighth grade. I
Mhm,
don't think their education was necessarily better. They had some equipment that I didn't have, some tools, but in
right.
terms of smartness, nah, I was good. And then also I discovered when I was a professor teaching
Mhm,
at different schools around the country, when I really started seeing the backgrounds and the aptitude of many white students, again, I realized that again, they didn't have anything on me or on the black students, but except uh, some people along the way who were encouraging them,
right.
and
And
that's so important.
and you talk a lot about perseverance and a lot about, you weren't the top in your class, or where did that perseverance come from?
You know what? I have there's an easy answer, but I usually pause because a lot of times people will say, "Well, you have six, seven, eight, nine siblings, but you don't know what the PhD. What happened? What made it different for you?" I think
Mhm.
that's the question that you're asking.
Yeah, yeah.
It's more than just, yeah, but it's more than just uh, skill and ability. But along the way, sometimes you have the same people you interact with, your siblings, your friends interact with. Sometimes they're different. And I
Mhm.
was fortunate to have people along the way who kept saying, "You can do it."
Right.
And I'm not saying my brothers and sisters did not, because they are, like I said, as smart, if not smarter.
Mhm.
But for me, I had the right people, the right checks along the way. And when I
Right.
was like 6 or 7 years old, I remember one of my aunts, my great aunt. She said to me, and she probably said it others as well. She said, "You." This is back in the. This is way back in the day.
Mhm.
She said, "You're not colored. You be proud of being black."
Mhm.
And I mean, that stuck with me as a 6, 7, 8-year-old, that this woman was telling me this. Of course, this was during the civil rights era.
Mhm.
And so people were becoming black and proud, black and beautiful.
Right, right,
But
right.
that stuck with me. That helped. That made a difference as well.
Right. So you had a sense of pride about who you were at an early age, and you kind of wanted to uh, keep that going.
But
And
As William said earlier, he referred to me as Ife Chukwu. Now, I have an African name that I've had since college. I've had it for 40 some years. I've had this African name. So yeah, it's not as I tell people, I didn't need to see Black Panther to be black and proud.
right, right. And,
Yeah.
and not to jump around too much or anything, because I want to go through your years in university, but uh there's a lot of information nowadays that maybe people of your generation weren't able to tap into when it comes to education about who we are, about who black people are. Right now I can just talk into my phone and find out some real information. It's not just 1 month in elementary school. um did you have a separate education when it came to, and I don't mean separate education as in
Mhm.
a school or anything, a sibling, a mentor that helped you realize your culture, and help you build that strong belief in yourself, black is beautiful.
So, my mother was a high school graduate.
Hmm.
She also attended a black school. My father was not a graduate. He had a few years of education,
Hmm.
but I always remember this guy. My dad always would be reading the newspaper. He would always be, again, back in the day, everyone wanted to look at Jet magazine and Ebony magazine.
Hmm.
And so and the Afro American out of Washington, out of DC and Baltimore, or the even the Philadelphia Tribune, was also one of the newspapers that I was aware of very, very early. And
Hmm.
so, in fact, when I later on I'm a journalist as well. I wrote for a lot of those black newspapers as well. Again, for the Tribune and some of the other ones in Philadelphia as well. But yeah, I was fortunate to have people who just encouraged me along the way, and I just didn't give up.
Right.
And like I said, when I was as a professor, I realized that there's unfair things going on that impacted us
Hmm.
along the way.
Yeah.
It wasn't smooth sailing. Don't get me wrong, because I remember when I was in college one time, but early on,
Hmm.
and I just chose to major. I majored in journalism,
Okay.
and I'm bouncing around a little bit, but kind of pull me back in, bring me back in.
No, no, you're
But
good. You're good. I'm listening to this great story. Go
one
ahead.
of my professors, I was in a class and I wrote this. I thought a very good paper
Hmm.
because I'm a writer. I learned how to write from way back.
Right.
And I remember going to his office, and he wanted to know who wrote this paper for me. Okay,
Mm.
so that kind of resistance was always there as well. But again, I just kept stayed positive, stayed focused,
Right.
and again, I don't get me wrong. Again, there were some positive white teachers and white professors along
Of
as
course.
well.
Yeah, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Um, and you bring up some interesting points because sometimes us in our own culture will have conversations between each other about things that held us back, or things that uh shouldn't hold us back. I had a conversation the other day where I used myself as an example. I'm the only black business owner in a building with about 50 businesses in it, and I'm the only one. Uh but to me, that makes me know that it's possible for other black people to do it. Um, I don't want people to see me as an exception to the rule because I feel like if I can do it, then anybody can do it. Have you ever had those conversations with people that think, well, this happened to us, so we can't do this, or we don't have uh, this generational opportunities like other people do, so I can't do it. Have you ever come across that situation?
So I've spent the last 5, 6 years working at a HBCU, a historically black college,
Mhm,
down here in Daytona Beach. So I've had lots of conversations with students uh, today's students about these very topics, these very issues as well.
mhm,
So how do you get through it? We've used the word perseverance over and over again already in this,
mhm,
but yeah, there are barriers that. Here's the thing: I tell my students there's a difference in an excuse and a reason. Okay, sometimes people try to find excuses for not succeeding,
mhm,
and sometimes they don't succeed because they use an excuse. But I also know the reality of it all is that for people of African descent, there are reasons.
mhm.
So again, I'm not trying to give anyone an excuse. So I'm saying there are
Yeah,
reasons. And so I'm that's my role as a journalist, as a
right,
professor, as a counselor, and so forth, to
right,
kind of point that out.
right. And for me, I'm right on the page with you. There are reasons, but the right now it doesn't make it impossible. Um,
Correct.
I do know that I'm a little bit privileged to be who I am. My father happened to be very poor himself. 10 brothers and sisters. They could see the hole in their kitchen from their bathroom upstairs, but he fought his way to make some money and move
Absolutely.
move me and my sisters to a good neighborhood where he has now two Temple graduates, two university graduates. Uh, Me, I'm a business owner. My other sister is a certified nurse's assistant, and then I have a young sister that's still in seventh grade. My dad's crazy, but so even though my sisters didn't go into the same field as my dad, they still and granted, one of my sisters never moved to the suburbs. She's my older sister, and she still graduated from Temple University. Um,
Very good school. Very good college.
yeah. So these are things that I see. Like, yeah, I grew up, you know, privileged and all in a way to be named right after the two-time heavyweight world champion. But when I leave and lock my door, people see me as a young black man, they don't know my name, my credentials, and everything. So I still see those barriers. I got to still walk into meetings with people, and I'm not, I, I'm black. That's
So I
the
have a
first.
question. I have a
Yes,
question for you as
yes.
well, because again, this is a good exchange.
Oh, I
I
love it.
appreciate it.
Yeah.
So my thing is, when you have ventured out beyond your home to do
Hmm.
business, and
Yeah.
you are sometimes the only or one of the few, do you feel like you are under a microscope? Do you feel like you are? See, I know there's a concept that maybe most people don't know, but we feel it, we sense it, we experience it. That's called honorary white status.
Hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So again, white folks feel comfortable with one or two or three of us, but not too many of us.
Right, right. I know that. Sometimes I feel that way.
Mhm.
I'm not gonna lie. But for me, and again, it's going back to my privilege. I happen to have a father who brought me all around the world, who we traveled all around. I had to be in contact with so many people even before I went to school. So being a people person, no matter who you are, it was not an issue to me. It's just now in my older age, I'm aware of my surroundings a little bit more about how I might be perceived to other people. But I can go into any room in the same conversation that we're having. I can have it. And rather it be white, black, Spanish, Puerto Rican, gay, straight. Uh, I feel like I developed we can call it a tool to be able to communicate with anybody, and that has to do with having both worlds too, where I grew up in the suburbs, but every other single family member lives in the inner city. So I know what it's like to be able to play soccer, baseball, tennis, be on the swim team, where I also know that my cousins might have only had basketball, might have only had football. They don't have a golf team where my cousins grew up. They don't have a tennis team. They don't have, target practice, so the opportunities like that I received allows me to, I feel, go into any room and be accepted. But I never leave behind who I really am. I never leave behind my blackness. Uh,
Absolutely.
yeah, no matter what that is. Uh,
Now, you already today in my conversation with you, uh, I've used the term black probably more than I used now in my life. No, but the reason I'm saying this is because I want to say I have elevated my game and my consciousness to being African.
okay,
And so I usually use the term African rather than black. But
right,
again, I know how to switch and to
right,
go for.
right. So I have an African customer, client per se, and she's from Guinea. She's from Guinea, and she will not allow me to call myself African. She says that I'm not African, and she says I'm just American, and I don't fight with her seriously. But I like to push back on that and say, well, where am I from? Have you come across Africans who will not accept African Americans as African?
Well, I chuckle because the answer is absolutely, but my answer to those Africans and to your friend as well is it's really not. And I said this with love, as with love, not with.
Right, right.
Uh, it's not their decision. They can't decide who I am.
Okay.
I know that many Africans, well, I say continental Africans. We're American Africans. They're continental Africans.
Right.
Listen, there was no Guinea when we were enslaved over here. There was no Nigeria. There was no Ghana. So
Right.
again, I don't have to necessarily identify with one country to be African. In
Right.
fact, what we have learned here or in the diaspora, or we have even forgotten in the been had beaten out of us,
Mm-hmm.
is probably more African than most continental Africans still have. And so most continental Africans are they're from Guinea, they're from Ghana, they're from Ethiopia, they're from New Sudan and so forth. But we have something that runs through us that's really continent wide, at least certainly Central Africa to West Africa. So
Right.
I'm not mad. I had these conversations with continental Africans all the time. So that's again, it's all good. It's all because it's a learning process.
Yeah,
And the
exactly.
last thing, and I don't get me going on this
No,
one because
no, keep going, keep going.
because I've served as the advisor to when I was in New York at St. John's University in Queens. Uh, I was the advisor to the African Student Association and the Haitian Society and the Caribbean students and the OLAS, the Organization of Latin American Students, and Haraya, which was the Black students, the African American students. I see the commonality. I see the common thread that they might not see sometimes in their youth. And then also many continental Africans who come here, they are privileged. Many of them are.
Yeah.
And so whatever kind of disinterest or resentment that might be there or misunderstandings, that has come from their homes as well, not just here. So if you're a snob to African Americans, I'm not saying your friend was a
No,
snob,
no, no,
but
no.
if you're a snob to African Americans, I can assure you that you're a snob to most people in your own country as well.
Right, right.
So there's a class thing going on as well, but I get it all the time, and again I have these discussions all the time.
Right, right. It's good to have one with you.
Yeah.
So you finish your first well, not finish your first, you finish your integrational high school, and then you you come to have to go to the university. Um, how was that process of choosing which university to go to, and what university did you choose?
So let me just give one more example from high school to show how I moved into the college. When I was in the ninth grade, I remember taking a Spanish class at the predominantly white school, and my Spanish teacher, my middle name is Orlando. Okay,
Okay.
so she couldn't fathom that a Black person would have a Spanish name.
Right,
So
right.
she gave me another name.
Wow.
So my name in the Spanish class was Paco, which means Frank. But anyway, but she couldn't quite wrap around that this guy Orlando has a Spanish name.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
that kind of, but I said that to say that as I was looking at colleges to go to, when I was in 11th grade, and I had my English teacher, she was a white teacher, and I played football in high school, so I was pretty well known. But I was, you're athlete. Your dad
Yeah.
knows he's an athlete. Sometimes you have to play. You play the dumb jock. Sometimes you kind of play it down.
Yeah.
Sometimes you play it up.
Right,
But I
right,
was a
right.
football player, and I was speaking in English class, and I would write these really nice papers in class. And so she said, "Young man," she singled me out in front of my classmates and all the football players. I was embarrassed. She said, "Young man, when you go to college, you should major in English." She didn't say if you go to college. She said when you go to college. And that made such a big impression on me because she believed in me.
Right, right,
So her support encouraged me to pick the right school to
right.
go to college at. But I actually started at a community college,
Okay,
and then I went off to a 4-year college
okay.
in Tennessee.
And that was economically
You know what? You know what? It was partly that because, but my two best friends, both of these guys went off to college and played football.
Mm.
And so had I been just a little bit bigger,
Right, right.
I might have given it a shot.
Right.
So it was economics, but at the same time, I realized I wasn't going to get much bigger. So let me
Hmm.
hit the books. And
Right,
so
right,
we
right.
had a pretty good school in the area. So I went there for 2 years. And then I transferred to Tennessee to go to school in Tennessee.
Okay. And that was Tennessee University State?
East East Tennessee State University. It
Okay.
was the it was the premier. It's still the premier, the second top four-year university in that part of the state of Tennessee.
Okay.
And so it was a good choice in that it gave me an opportunity to experiment, to meet people from outside of Virginia, but I could have done much, much, much better.
Yeah,
In
yeah.
hindsight, I really could have.
Did you not enjoy your time there, or
Uh,
what makes you make
so
that reference?
let me put it this way. It took me about 30 years to start saying good things about Tennessee.
Wow.
I block. If you talk to me about my school, I might start with New York, I might start with Illinois, I might go to California. Tennessee was just not, it wasn't me. But today I say, hey, it's a beautiful state.
Hmm.
I have some lifelong friends there.
Hmm.
Uh, I said I was the first African American to earn a degree in journalism at the university. So there's some things that happened to me that were positive.
Right.
So that's how I look at Tennessee. And then
Okay.
let me tell you this: the trick of it all. I was looking for schools to go to,
Hmm.
and my counselor and I contacted East Tennessee State. We talked to the dean of students, and I said, well, my counselor and I said, how many black students do you have at East Tennessee?
Hmm.
And the dean of students there, he said, well, we have about 1,000 Negroes.
Oh man.
We got 1,000. So I'm like, that's not, I was like, at least he could have said Afro American or something, but
Yeah, yeah,
Negroes,
yeah.
right?
Negroes. I've
So
never even heard that before.
yeah. So I said, okay, 1,000. Okay, I could deal with this. But let me tell you, I went to East Tennessee and I met all 145 of those black students the first weekend there.
Wow. So it went from a
It wasn't
thousand to one.
1,000.
He
So
needed you to be the 135th, huh?
so that's why that's one of those reasons I kind of look at Tennessee as like,
Mm.
if I had known, I would have done something differently. But East Tennessee, it really is a good school. It's a good school,
Right.
beautiful campus. Yeah.
Right. Right. And you majored in journalism?
And journalism, that's right. I was the
Right.
first African American in journalism to get a degree from that school.
Right.
And then from there, I mean, it was like I said, I really had to think hard about positive experiences at East Tennessee because it was fortunately I was close enough to friends, and we had a nice clique, a group of people from Virginia there as well. So it
Hmm.
worked out okay.
Right. Right.
Illinois was a different experience, though.
Right. Illinois is a state I'm familiar with.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
yeah, my girlfriend is from right outside of Chicago, so I
Mhm.
go there at least once a year.
Which
Um,
which what town?
so she's from a small town called Marengo, Illinois. The
Okay.
closest towns would be Crystal Lake, Belvedere. Um,
Oh,
I
she's
spent
down. She's down. She's more down by St. Louis then, or is that about
no,
Chicago?
it's about an hour from the city, maybe
Okay.
a hour from the city, but it's about 2 hours from Iowa.
Okay.
So you can go
Yes, you're
towards
right.
Iowa. Um, but what I realized about her, where she grew up, actually, is that there's no black people whatsoever. I think the closest black person was like a Native American or something, that I saw. Um, but if you're in the inner city, it's a big difference. It's like night and day. It's very rural in some places. Then when you go to places like Rockford, Illinois, or Chicago, you start to see more urban life. Where were you at in Illinois?
So I did my master's degree at my first master's degree at Illinois State University, and
Okay,
that's in normal Bloomington,
okay,
and it's halfway between St. Louis and Chicago, pretty much halfway through.
Right.
Um, it was fun being out there. It was cold as all get out. No, it was
Yeah,
just too
yeah,
cold.
yeah.
But I enjoyed my time hanging out with those folks from Chicagoland and from all the way down to East State, the Quad Cities, and Rockford and
Exactly.
Peoria, and on and on. It was a good
Exactly.
experience.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
I love that area. Now back to journalism though. Um, you went to school to be a journalist. I prize myself as a journalist now because I'm talking to you.
Uh,
uh,
okay.
and I really to segue into uh, this ties all into it because I'm being a journalist is something that's actually how should I say this? It's a not a privilege, but it's something where you should take it serious. It's actually everyone's First Amendment right. You know, we all have freedom of press. So for an African American, uh, it is very important for us to have freedom of press. You know, we had situations where we weren't allowed to travel, so we had to print, certain books for us to be able to use so we could travel. Obviously, certain stories wouldn't have gotten out there uh, because certain stories are only told by certain people. Uh, so, do you take pride in your journalism, and do you actually have those same thoughts about, the First Amendment being very, very important to African Americans?
Uh, all of the amendments are very
Oh,
important, but
yes.
yes, but
Mhm.
absolutely. I would say that journalism, again, I'm proud to say that I went to journalism school, so I'm a real journalist. But you don't have to go to J school to be a journalist. It's
Mhm.
really about being knowledgeable, being interested in telling accurate stories.
Mhm.
And so, as I mentioned earlier on, I grew up reading Ebony magazine and Jet, and we had one in Roanoke, the Roanoke Tribune, which is a black newspaper as well, still in existence today.
Mhm.
So you have to have, and in fact, my PhD, I don't want to jump too far here, but my PhD, my dissertation was on the black press.
Mhm.
So I can talk about the importance of journalism as a recipient of a degree in that area, and also about someone who's been a subject. So again, you can't beat the importance of telling our own story.
Right.
And so when Freedom Journal was created back in 1824 in New York City, his purpose was to tell the story for us because too many others had told our story. And so it's time for us to tell our story. And that has to be that's the same thing right now.
Mhm.
That's why you have a growing journalism or media presence to kind of even talk about what Kyrie is going through right now, what
Right.
Ye is going through right now.
Right.
You have to have those vehicles in place to talk about, to tell that story. And
Right.
so I've been very, again, I don't know who hit me over the head when I was young, but I'm telling you, I've had this interest from way back.
Right.
And even when I was at East Tennessee, again, there were times when, again, only a handful of us at the school out of 10,000. I was not shy. I wrote a column for the school for the school newspaper called Black Rap. Okay,
Mhm.
so I was putting things out there, not afraid,
Right.
because it had to be told.
Right. Right.
So yeah, I think so today when I talk to people, I teach mass communications. I've been chair of the
Right. Right.
department at Bethune-Cookman University, HBCU. Again, I talk about how we have to tell our own story. It's not just a matter of getting a job as a journalist, but you have to also be a warrior as well.
Right.
So,
Definitely. And you know, journalism isn't always a safe space. You're telling stories that not necessarily everybody wants to get out. Sometimes you might have to travel to a place where you don't want to travel. um what are,
and
what
but
Go ahead.
also not only that, all that's true what you said, 100.
Hmm.
But in some countries, it's dangerous to be a journalist.
Right.
I mean, there's so many stories of journalists going out there trying to do their job and they don't return. They get killed
Right. Right.
trying to be that voice out there.
It's
It's
a
a tough
very
profession.
yeah, yeah.
It's a tough
Have
profession.
you ever had any stories or any experiences where you thought, man, this is this is rough for someone that has a PhD?
Uh, well, my stories would probably be before I got my PhD,
Mhm.
because as a PhD, I was more teaching others to become journalists.
Right, right, right.
But what I will say in relation to what you're saying is that I've also been a syndicated columnist. That means I write a column that runs in a lot of newspapers and magazines around the country. So
Right,
there are times out there when I feel like I'm alone in what I'm saying, but someone has to say it.
right, right,
And then I look around and I realize, like, the feedback that I get from people, I realize that I'm not alone.
right,
But
right,
yeah, you gotta be a warrior. You gotta be a
right, right,
warrior.
right, right, right.
But pick your battles.
Hmm. So, you're teaching these kids and and at a HBCU as well. Um, Besides what you just said, when it comes to being a journalist, what is probably one of the most key principles that you need, uh, to create your stories?
So I'm smiling on that because uh, one of the first things you're taught in J school is that you have to be objective.
Hmm.
Okay. But then in my mind, I'm saying, yeah, but who's objective? I mean, who again? How objective is it? And what objective does the other person have who's
Right,
telling that story?
right.
So no, I think you have to be. For me, the most important piece, and that this is just strictly Ife Chukwu talking now, and
Okay.
that
Yeah.
is for me. I have to be African centered.
Okay.
If we're not African centered, we're gonna be sent this way when the wind blows. We'll be sent that way when the wind blows. But if I'm African centered, I can still be a very good journalist.
Right.
But that piece just has to be in place. And most journalists are not taught. Most African American journalists are not even taught that. And
Right.
so that's why we want to get job. We want to get jobs at these big magazines and newspapers, and in front of at newscasters. But again, we're really making a difference,
Right.
and that's why I'm for me it has to be African centered, or at least African sensitive.
Hmm.
Those two are important.
Now, do you feel like in the industry part of it, not at the teaching level, in the industry part of it, uh, that being African centered is not always easy? I was watching, and I think this was CNN. Actually, they had a piece on uh, natural hair and how some of the broadcasters were looked at differently for wearing their hair naturally. So a lot of African American women started straightening their hair. Have you ever come across that issue, a little pushback on being too African central?
Oh, absolutely.
Hmm.
But then that's when that happens, I realize I'm doing something right.
I got
Okay.
you.
Again, remember Frederick Douglass said you got to agitate, agitate, agitate.
Hmm.
So there's always some kind of, you have to always push the envelope a little bit. But I'm not mad at people when they're not, but I understand why their careers short circuit when it could have gone further. But at
Hmm.
the same time, I think the other part of what you're asking or you're implying is that sometimes if you're too black, that also might hurt your career as well.
Yeah, but for me, my solution would be to just do your own thing. But I'm growing up in a different era, where you can do your own thing. There was only a couple of news outlets not too long ago that you had to conform to and be a part of. Times have changed, I guess, where at least for me. You know, there's more opportunity for us to tell our stories and have our own even outlet like I have right here, the Young Black Suburban. Um, do you see a change and shift in the way that news is broadcasted, or the way that journalists write stories?
Well, if you'd asked me that 10 or 15 years ago, I probably would have said, okay, you have MS, you have MSNBC over here,
Yeah,
then you have CNN in the middle, and you got Fox News on the other end.
yeah, yeah.
But today I teach correctly that they're just different heads of the same the same coin.
Right, right, right,
And so at least be honest about that. If we're not honest, then we keep falling behind.
right.
I have friends who are in all those, in all three of those companies.
Mhm.
And I like what I'm seeing in some of the social media outlets. I'm going to have to start plugging more into what you're doing as well.
Definitely.
And because that's so important, we do have those independent voices or something that's a little bit away from the what I call the bizarro media. Okay, because a lot of what's out there being fed to us is really a lot of dishonesty.
Right.
But I don't want people to. I mean, I don't want people to just think that I'm ragging on the
Mhm.
media, but it needs to be criticized.
Yeah.
And,
Well,
and I said this because again, my youngest daughter is the managing editor of the LA Times.
mm,
Okay, so
right.
again, I listen. I appreciate the degree she got from Howard and what she's doing with various outlets, but when she was in BuzzFeed and some others. So again, I know and have the appreciation of the media, but you
Mhm.
got to come in there strong. You got to come in there strong. If you
Yeah,
don't,
definitely.
yeah.
Yeah. It's like a lot of industries for us, you know. You gotta go above and beyond. I would probably think boxing is probably one of the fields where we can be even, you know. Um, but what are some of the other projects that you have going on right now besides journalism? Are you out there? You got any groups or any uh, things that you're working on?
Oh, absolutely. As much as I love journalism, there are three areas that I try to stick to. If I stick to these three areas, I think I can hang with anybody in these areas, and that is issues around the media, issues around uh, leadership. Okay, I mean, leadership is really like part of my key, and then higher education. So the media, higher education, and leadership. And so those three things drive me, and that's when you really talk about who I am. It gets
Mhm.
into my think tank that I have that I created 20 plus years ago that is still going strong. And without it, so the think tank is called INVR Standards HHEW. It's an
Okay.
African centered leadership think tank that has been around, and we address issues of leadership, higher education, and the media. And so that's my. I don't want to say my passion because sometimes people can be passionately wrong.
Mhm.
Okay,
Right, right,
but
right,
it certainly is what keeps me centered.
right.
Um, 'Cause I have a leadership theory that I think works whether you're if you're in boxing, if you have your own, if you are a content creator in social media, if you are president of a university, my leadership theory works and it helps explain who we are and where we fall short.
Mhm. Now, let's touch more on that leadership uh, conversation because I peg myself as a leader. Oh, and the one a reason why I call myself a leader is because I'm willing to be first. I'm willing to do things that other people aren't willing to do.
Mhm.
And I'm willing to bring other people with me. Uh, that not necessarily might want to be leaders, but might need a little hand up. They might need a little push. That to me, that's what I think it is. What is your definition of leadership?
Well, a leadership or a leader is someone who has followers.
Hmm.
Okay, I mean, that's pretty basic.
Okay,
But
yeah.
but but because I hear people sometimes say, "I'm not a leader." I mean, I think about what Charles Barkley said many years ago. I'm not a role model.
Right,
Well,
right,
you
right.
are a role model. Well, you say you are not. You are a role model. Okay, maybe a
Hmm.
bad one, but you are a role model to
Right,
somebody.
right,
Okay,
right.
but for me, um, when I talk about leadership, I'm not okay. Uh, okay, I don't know where I don't know where your politics, where you're in terms of
Uh,
politics.
just speak your
But
mind. Speak your
no, no,
mind.
no, 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 no. I'm gonna do that. But I'm just trying to, just build this.
Yeah.
I can talk about the leadership skills of Clarence Thomas
Hmm.
as much as I can talk about the leadership skills of Barack Obama. Or I
Hmm.
can talk about the leadership skills of Nelson Mandela. I can talk about the leadership skills of Candace Owens.
Hmm.
Okay, so all these people they kind of different ballpark in different areas, but
Hmm.
the point is leadership is leadership.
Right, right, right.
That's the first thing.
Hmm.
I happen to think it needs to be more African centered. And of the people I named a moment ago, none of them are African. None of them are African centered.
Right, right,
None.
right, right.
There are some closer, but none are African centered. And I
Right.
think that's one of the things that we're missing in our
So
training of our training
for
of us.
for for the people that keep hearing us talk about African Central, uh, could you maybe clarify exactly what you mean by African Central?
We're African centered. African centered.
Central, yeah.
It simply means that what you are presenting needs to first and foremost be in the best interest of Africa, of people of African descent.
Okay.
And the reason I say that we have to be very clear about that because it's my has been my experience that the more African centered we are, it really benefits everyone. It
Hmm.
really does. It's just that we've been told over and over again, you can't be, don't be too black. And, we got to be universal. Well, if all people came from black people, if all people came from Africa, you can't get any more universal than that.
Right.
Okay, so our experience is universal. So
Hmm.
again, it gets back to the point about sometimes we get pushed back, sometimes we don't know how to express it. We're a little concerned that we're not going to really appeal to enough people. But I think that if you go in there, I mean, I keep talking about the Tribune because you know about the Philadelphia Tribune,
Yeah,
okay?
yeah, yeah,
You know about
definitely.
and
Yeah.
and what's the other one? There's another is the Observer. There's another one. There's a couple of other black newspapers in Philly.
Right.
But the point is, those voices are so important. Even if everybody, even if everybody doesn't go to Cheney or go to Lincoln, the
Hmm.
presence of Cheney and Lincoln in the area is very important to
Right, right,
their part of stuff to their area.
right.
And the same thing with the black newspapers. Do they still do you still have what is it? DOS WDAS? Is it still
Yeah,
there?
WDAS. Yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's still there.
Okay. Okay. So again, those kinds of they need to be there.
Right,
Okay. So
right,
that's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. I'm
right.
not saying you got to be all and only black, but if
Yeah,
you
yeah,
are putting something out there that's going to benefit people of African descent, it's
right.
going to benefit everybody.
So, like for me, I understand exactly what you're saying, but for some of our other brothers and sisters, they might hear African centered, and because of the way that American culture is, it might not register to them the same way that it registers to us. So
Yeah,
that's
they can
why.
say they're going to say, "I'm not African. I don't know
Yeah,
anything about Africa." I understand that. I know. I get that. I know all that. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. So, and another thing that's a big part of my heart, I have a nonprofit called the Witherspoon Community Initiative, and one thing that we're trying to do, we haven't really done it yet, is to get underprivileged kids. It's not really doesn't matter what background you come from, but underprivileged kids access to SAT prep, because we all know that SATs are, the scoring system that they use to get into school, but not everybody can afford uh, the help to get there. So that's something that we're trying to do, as well as uh, pair up kids that don't want to go to college with a trade, or someone to try to give them that avenue. Um, what are you guys doing for higher education? I don't want to say you guys, but Dr. Hilton, you're a one man team. What
Well, I hope
what are
I'm
your
not a one. I
discussions?
hope I'm not. I hope I'm not a one man team.
Well, you could be.
Well, what I've discovered again as I've traveled from Virginia to Tennessee to Illinois to New York to California to Florida is there are a lot of Dr. Hiltons out there,
Mm,
but we haven't done the best job of talking about of networking.
right.
And so that's why I take much pride in my in INVR status, HHEW, my think tank, because that's what I'm trying to do is connect the dots, make it a networking piece.
Right.
What are we doing, Fahad? What are we doing right now? We are doing again building a network.
Hmm.
We are also training people to go out there and do their best because people have the credentials. I mean, I know too many people with degree. I was talking with a friend the other day. She has a degree from Penn. Okay,
Hmm.
I mean Penn. That's Ivy League. That's
Yeah,
really
definitely.
that's Ivy
Yeah.
League.
Yeah.
Okay, so we got the network. We got people who we have the Harvard people and all those people and the Howard and so forth. But it's how you make their thing at least demonstrate the importance of being African centered.
Hmm.
Okay. SATs, some schools, I think out in California now they have dropped the SATs as
Right.
a as,
Right.
a, as one of the criteria. So again, we have
Exactly.
to figure out how do we get those students into these schools anyway. And right now they have this big lawsuit right now that's going on. I think it's University of Texas and University of Michigan right now. They want to drop affirmative race as a
Hmm.
criteria to go to those schools right now.
Right.
So it's a lot of battles. That's why I keep
Yeah.
saying we got to be vigilant. We have to be African centered because if we
Hmm.
don't, then we're gonna look around and say, "Oh, we lost affirmative action. Oop, we just lost uh, something that's going to benefit us to get into a top notch HBCU or PWI."
Right. Right.
Let's not forget. And one of the things I also do, I also encourage my students and my friends to think international as well, not just in the States. Go around the world. Go. There are lots
Mhm.
of
Oh,
great
definitely.
schools and opportunities outside of the United States.
Right, right. I got my I tell people I got my degree in England, cuz I left school to become a professional fighter, and I've been doing something in boxing ever since. But when all my other friends were going to Penn State or Temple, I have a few, I was overseas training and fighting, and what happened was um that was actually my first experience with a Jamaican guy saying that I wasn't African American. And that was actually my first experience when I went over there. But I realized that there was good and bad people wherever you go. When I went over there, and it was right. I graduated high school right around the we we were probably in Iraq for about 2 years, maybe 3 years at the time. And I went over there with the mindset that, man, these guys are not going to like me because I'm American or whatever. And I go over there and I realized that these people felt the same way that I felt about things. So I know that traveling is really important.
Absolutely.
And I'll tell everybody today that I got my degree over over in the UK.
I I actually went to the UK. I've been there a few times as well, and in fact, I visited the Hilton Castle, which is
Okay.
in up by Newcastle, up in the
Okay,
north.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
And
north. That's almost Scotland, right? Or
exactly, and I've been to Scotland as well. But
right.
again, my point is that that's where the name the Hilton came from the at least on the European side.
Right.
And so so I have an appreciation for the UK and also for those Africans from the Caribbean as well.
Right.
Yeah,
Right. Right.
yeah, that was.
So one point I wanted to touch on was the economics of higher education. Um, a lot of people can't afford university and can't go there. What do you say about the economic situation for people that might uh think that college is not, in their grasp?
Well, certainly, and this is not, I don't have the control over this at this
Hmm.
moment, but first of all, education should be free. Okay, it
Right.
really should be free.
I heard it
I mean,
was
but
at one point. I heard that it was at one point, but then uh someone somewhere, I don't want to say specifics because I don't know. This is just something that I heard said that, they let's charge for this to keep certain people out of the educational system. That's the story that I heard.
well, that's a good story because there's some truth to it. But I think what happened is that was the case in for some of the community college or 2-year colleges in places like New York
Hmm.
and in California, some other places. I mean, it was there's no cost
Right.
to go to school. It was free.
Right.
But the funny thing is that sometimes when people get those educations, they go through there, they want to close the doors behind them.
Mm.
And instead of encouraging, let's expand this. A
Right.
lot of times, and then plus some people just they think they're just full-fledged capitalists, and so they don't realize that you can only go so far as a capitalist.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, education should be free. But again, right now we do still have community colleges that are uh, much cheaper than going to some of the 4-year schools,
Hmm.
uh, especially especially the private schools are more expensive than the publics. So I still encourage people to look at community colleges, and in some cases, Tim, now you have many community colleges which are very expensive. They also have you get a 4-year degree. You get a bachelor's degree at a 2-year
Right.
college now.
Right.
So
Right.
again, you don't have to go off to St. Joseph's or go to some of
Right.
these other.
Every college in Philadelphia.
A Nova, Villanova. Okay, I know.
Really?
I'm a higher ed.
Yeah.
My college was called Hilton Higher Education Worldwide. Hilton. I know
Right.
higher ed. I know it.
You just forgetting Drexel. You got to
No,
get
I was going
Drexel.
to. Let me tell you, Drexel. I was offered a job at Drexel, but Drexel had a campus in Sacramento, California.
Wow.
They were going to try to expand to the West Coast,
Wow.
and so they were doing okay for a while, but they crashed, so they're no
Okay.
longer there. But yeah, Drexel, I have an appreciation with Drexel as well.
Yeah, 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 yeah. They're here in Philly.
Yeah.
So we are actually towards the end of our conversation. We've actually been talking for an hour. I
Wow.
wanna come to your think tank and be a part of that if I can. Um, what
I
I
would love
usually
to have. I would love because what I know from William what you're doing and listening to you right now, and again knowing a little bit about your dad's history. I
Mhm.
mean, you are uh, how can I say it? You're pedigreed.
I
And
appreciate
so
that. Yeah.
and so that's the kind of young voices we need at a group like INVR Stat or HHEW group, because we
Right.
have a lot of young people who have ideas and they're not just followers, they're leaders in their own right.
Right, right. I appreciate that. I'm gonna make sure William keeps in contact with you so we can do just that.
I
But
think you will. I think
at
you
the end
will.
of the show, though, what we do is we allow our guests to send their message out to the world. And I usually don't tell people, I put them on the spot at the end of the show so it can be authentic and natural. So this is your chance to tell the world what Dr. Hilton wants them to know.
Thank you very much for, first of all, the opportunity to be a part, just to converse with you today. And I appreciate the questions that you were asking me, but I got to tell you, I learned as much from you today me just run off at the mouth. Okay,
Right.
so this was a good exchange. I I consider myself to be a reporter and a recorder for the Times, reporter and recorder of the Times.
Mhm.
And if I can stay true to that mission and being African centered, and I think I cannot go wrong. We cannot go wrong. It's bigger than me. Uh, we're on the winning side. What you're doing is a winning side
Mhm.
uh, uh, proposition through your organization. What William is doing is a win-win as well. So again, I just love interacting with having the opportunity to interact with you and others who because I'm not alone. I guess that's what I'm trying. I'm not
Yeah,
a
exactly.
one-man band.
No, not
And
at
this
all.
when I talk to people like that, like you, it just tells me that we're on the winning side.
Definitely.
HHEW is going to be a winning think tank with people like you and Williams and others part of this, and let's go forward.
That's it.
And keep an eye on me in terms of what I'm going to be doing in terms of higher education as well.
Definitely. Do you have any way that our viewers can contact you or reach you? You have a social media, anything like that?
So I usually send people. I'm kind of old school
No
in that
problem.
no. I'm simply saying that if you Google or did a keyword search on HHEW group, it's going to all unfold in front of you about the organization or INVR, which is INVR standards.
Okay.
It's going to unfold about the think tank as well. So again, it's up there. It's been up there for many, many years. I know people appreciate what I'm trying to do because I'm being cited and quoted in the Taylor leadership theory has been cited around the world for the last 20 years. No, I'm sorry, the last 10 years, but the think tank has been around for 20 years.
Right. Nice. Well, Dr. Hilton, I'm not going to take up too much of your time. I appreciate you coming on the Young Black Suburban. Everybody, that's Dr. Keith Hilton. And we'll see you on the next one. If you like what you saw today, please like, share, and subscribe. See you guys later. All right, Dr. Hilton, we're good.
Okay, we're done.
Yep, I appreciate it. I think that we need to do this again. and,
I would love
and,
to.
and
I
have
would
another
love to.
one. Maybe I can do a virtual sit-in at your think tank
Oh, absolutely. It's June. It's gonna be in June
in
in
June.
Las Vegas.
And okay, all right. Well, so you're gonna have like a convention, kind of?
Yes, yes.
Oh man, we gotta be.
We've been having this conference 18 years straight from 2004, 2002, and the only time we didn't have was because of COVID.
Now, do you have to have a PhD to be involved?
No, no,
I'm messing with
no.
you.
In fact, listen. In fact, the way it's set up, most people don't have. You can be an activist, you can be an athlete, you can be who you are,
Right,
and
right.
just be about us.
All right. So we're gonna stay in contact. All right.
Sounds good.
All
All
right.
right, then.
I appreciate it, doctor.
Take care. Good talk. Good talk to you.